Hello, everybody. My name is Carter Hall, your host of the What Really Happened podcast, an entertainment podcast. So begin right now. Shout out to Blueborn for that beat drop. On with this podcast today, I have Isaiah Tanner, radio DJ out of West Texas A&M University for KWTS, who will come on talk about some of his favorite country songs and some process starting out. Putting a show together as a program director. But yeah, nonetheless, it was a great conversation. Nonetheless, I hope you have a great time listening to this podcast because I had a lot of fun hearing his process. So nonetheless, let's get into it. Cheers. So as you just heard, I got Isaiah Tanner from West Texas A&M with me. He's a radio DJ at KWTS 91.1 FM. Isaiah, thank you for joining the show. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. It's always been when I was kind of writing down, thinking of ideas of guests, you're always one of the first ones that actually popped up because I'm
Oh,
like,
really?
yeah, for sure. Because I'm like, man, I wanted to broaden out my guests, like kind
Yeah.
of go further other than just sports and true crime and stuff like that. So I kind of want to branch out and talk about radio. And when I sent you that invite or asked you first on Instagram, you're for sure you were like almost a quick yes, and then you talked about like, yeah, when we talk about radio, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, of course, like I want to talk about radio. So
Yeah.
thanks for that. So thanks for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I was kind of honestly, I was shocked that somebody wanted to have me on their podcast, but
You're good, man. No, like I think because we're gonna get into this a little bit, but you actually have your own show on 91.1 The One. So
yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. I think everything would kind of tie in or anything like that. So I think every story has its beginning, and I kind of want to before we get into our main topic about how radio has possibly changed, and I want to get your thoughts on that, but. We kind of have to go back a little bit. I kind of want to ask, like, how was radio like introduced into your life?
Oh man, dude, that's gonna be a long answer.
Take your time, man.
so there was an old show. I okay. So a little bit of background on me first. I like old things. Like some of my favorite TV shows are like Cheers and Frasier and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, But no, my dad showed me this show, and it was called WKRP in Cincinnati. And
yeah.
they had an episode that because he would show it to me, he showed it to me on Thanksgiving. And there was a certain episode, and a lot of people, if you got older listeners, they definitely know what I'm probably talking about. It's called the Turkey Drop episode,
Mhm.
and it was a funny thing because it was about this radio station in Cincinnati, and they switched their format from like basically elevator music to a rock format, like
Oh,
almost
really?
like that. It's a crazy thing. You can find all the episodes on YouTube, and I mean that's how I watched them all.
Oh, really?
Probably shouldn't have admit that, but whatever. Um,
I'll
I
edit
think
it out.
I think the statute of limitations is kind of passed on that maybe. But no, in this episode they they're trying to promote their radio station, and this is just something that's funny about radio station managers. And the joke of it is they don't always have the same idea of what's going on that
Mhm.
like the people actually work and do. And so what the station manager did, Mr. Carlson, got a helicopter and he got a bunch of turkeys and he dropped them out over Cincinnati. And turkeys don't fly.
Yeah.
Everybody else knew that, but he didn't know that. And so it's a hilarious thing. And they had one of their uh, news guys standing there, and he was doing like a live remote in for it, and he
Mhm.
was describing it, and he was even uh, so whenever the Hindenburg, I know we're jumping all over the place already,
No, you're
but
good.
when the Hindenburg crashed, there was a radio announcer that said, "Oh, the humanity," and that was one of the jokes that the news guy said. He goes, "Oh, the humanity." It's a, but I was just like, man, and there was a guy on there that strictly stuck out to me, and he was just the coolest dude I'd ever seen before. And he actually died just not too long
Oh
ago.
no.
And he's actually the reason I wanted to get in radio in the first place. His name was Howard Hessman, and he played a DJ on it called Dr. Johnny Fever. And
Oh
he was
yeah.
just like the coolest dude ever.
Sure.
He like in that episode, he you know, they lost connection with their remote guy, and he just calmly just goes whenever he's like on air, he just goes, "Well, we lost Les," and then he just went into playing music. I was like, dude, that's honestly how I handle a lot of my problems in life. I just sit there, I'm like, well, that's not gonna work. We'll just see what
No.
else happens, I suppose. But no,
That's
he
kind of
was yeah, he was kind of what got me wanting to be in radio. And now I just fell in love with it. I'd also been man, we're going back even farther than I thought we would. So I was a part of 4-H since I was in the third grade, and
wow.
living in a small town, the radio station would always have out the 4-H members, and that's some more to talk to you about on that later. But
Yeah.
they would always have 4-H members out, and for like because they do this thing called coffee break, and it was like a excuse me, a oh, I can't think of the name of it. But it was like just like an interview type, just a calm sit down interview type thing.
Yeah.
Basically a podcast that wasn't like just it was basically a live podcast essentially.
Yeah.
But and so they would have us out there every time, and I was like, man, that's just fun. You get to sit there and play music all day. But then again, I didn't know everything else that went into it. Um, so I was just really I was checked into it, and so yeah, we seventh grade happened. I saw the WKRP thing, and then 10th grade, yeah, 10th grade on my 16th birthday, I uh, I went out to KEYE, which is the radio station I worked for there, or I still work for every now and then.
Mhm.
Um, and I kind of gotten to where I knew the boss and or the manager and her husband pretty well, and John and Sharon Elsie, they're just sweet, wonderful people. I mean, dude, seriously, whenever people would ask them why they would do stuff, they'd say, "We always do it for the kids." And they're
Oh,
just the
great.
sweetest people. Oh man, dude, they were great.
That sounds
But
amazing.
yeah, no, a lot of people have terrible first bosses. No, mine were top notch. But no, and I went out there and I handed my boss my resume and stuff. I'd had a little bit of experience doing um like sound stuff with as far as working with my church goes, but
Mhm.
it wasn't much. And so I handed it to him, and I was like, "Hey, I'd like to just give this a shot." And he was like, "Yeah, okay, well, we're not going to have anything for you because it was like, um, oh, probably April or May when I went out there. Excuse me, but
You could-
and so I did that. Went out there and talked to him, and he said, "Well, if we have something come up, we'll give you a call." All right. So the whole summer went by going into my junior year. Didn't hear anything from 'em. I didn't really expect to. But then they put an ad on Facebook. And this is just the power of friends, I suppose. But they put this ad on Facebook, and they put a deal saying, we're looking for a new board operator, and we'd love for you to join our team. And one of my friends, his name is Ben Barant. I always got to give him credit whenever talking about me getting into radio because he's probably the reason it happened. But so they put this ad out on Facebook, and in about 30 minutes after that, he comments on it um,
Mhm.
at Isaiah Tanner. Didn't you already apply for this position last year? And I was like, crap, dude. I said, yeah,
Oh no.
well, I was like, yeah, I had. And then about 30 minutes later, they took the post down, and I'd gotten a phone call at the house from John Elsie, and for some reason he called my house phone. I never understood that. For like the first year working for him, he would always call my house phone instead of my cell phone. I'm not entirely sure about that, but no. So he did that, and I was like, well, he said he called me at about, I think he called the house at like 3 or something, and my dad was home. And so my dad picked up the phone. I wasn't home because I was still at school, but my dad told my mom what was going on. I hadn't even told my mom that I'd applied for a job out there.
So about a
And
year. So a whole summer goes by without you.
Well,
saying that you even applied.
yeah, no. My dad knew because he was the one that I borrowed his pickup to go out there and do it.
Yeah.
But no, so
Sorry to cut you
I
off.
was oh no, you're good, dude. Don't worry about it. But no, so he called the house and everything, and my dad gave him my cell phone number, which I thought was on my resume, but I guess it wasn't. And John texted me and said, Isaiah, this is John Elsey. And the weird thing was, so he actually lived in Virginia for about 10 years, and that's where he got his cell phone number. So whenever he like texted me and stuff, it was like a 740 number, and I didn't even know what it was. So I was like, oh, I think it's a scam.
Yeah.
But no, so he texted me and said, hey, do you want to learn how to be a board operator? Of course I do. And so I went out there and got there at about 3:30. The first game I ever worked started at 4:30.
Oh wow.
And he's standing there in a t-shirt and shorts and cargo shorts and said, all right. And he had this old radio voice. All right, Isaiah, this is what you want to do. And he sat there and told me everything in 5 minutes, and then he just left. And I was sitting there, I was like,
Oh
what
no.
crap? But that was probably the best thing that happened to me was him doing that because it really just pushed you out there and made you learn on your own. But then again, it was a
Yeah.
super easy thing to do. But so yeah, that's kind of how I got started in radio. And so that was junior year, and then by the spring of my junior year, I was calling games. So
Oh nice. So was it a pretty good transition for you from like learning your first day to calling games? Was that pretty? Was that how? What was the transition like for that?
well,
Was there
so
one?
start yeah, kind of really, yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know what you'd call a transition, but so it started off where I was working for him, and we got to probably I think maybe February or so. And I told him, I said, you know, John, I'd really like to start learning how to DJ and all that. He said, well, all the good DJs that I know of started out doing play by play and color commentary, which I think that helped, but I also think it might have been one of those deals where, hey, I need somebody to do this, and this is how I'm going to get you to do it.
Yeah.
So, but I was like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. And I said, well, what sport is it? He said, baseball. And I was like, well, crap. Because honestly, the last time I played baseball, I got knocked in the eye and had a black eye, and it was swollen shut for like a month. And that was back in the second grade.
Oh wow.
So I was like, John, I got to be honest with you, I know nothing about baseball. But now I've gotten to it to where I actually, whenever I watch baseball, I know what's going on and I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Um, but I mean, it was just he had me, you know, still doing board operator and stuff. And for those of y'all that don't know, I guess that are listening, it's all you're doing is playing commercials and making sure the person that's on air stays on air for as long as they need to be there.
Mhm.
Um, said quick explanation, but so yeah, he said, all right, well, so okay, where I live in Perryton, I don't know, we're doing a lot of backtracking here, but
You're good.
there's a
Take
town
your time.
20 miles, yeah, 20 miles east of here called Booker.
Yeah.
And yeah, so he had gotten the way that it works is the booster clubs for those schools will reach out to them and say like, hey, we'd like you to come and carry our team for this season or whatever. And you know, he'd say okay, and if they, you know, were able to come up with the money for it and all that stuff. And so John he was known as the voice of the uh, Ranger athletics. So that
Mhm.
was Rangers and Rangerettes. That was our girls teams and all that. And so Booker, they needed somebody to do it. And so at the moment, it was just my boss, John Elsey, and the guy that taught me driver's ed, uh, Coach Ronnie Watson. Uh, and Ron, he's a funny guy. Man,
Yeah.
he's hilarious. But
Oh really?
yeah, it's not one of those deals where he tries to be funny. It's just it's just funny.
Just
But
like just naturally funny without even trying.
yeah, but no, and so he had my boss said, "Well, here I'm going to do this whole game, and you just come out there and sit with me, and you can be my bookkeeper." I said, "Okay, that sounds good enough," and it's just kind of learning. And then inning number 7 rolls around. So yeah, top of the no, it was bottom of the 7th, and he took a commercial break and he looked at me. He said, "You want to do it?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know how good this is going to be."
Oh.
And I said, "Well, let's give it a shot." And the game was against Booker versus Turpin, and Turpin's in Oklahoma. And so we were sitting there, and he hands me his headset, and my gosh, dude, I still have the recording from that game. That last half inning that I did, man, it was bad.
No.
I'm just
No.
sitting there listening to it. I'm like, golly, that was because it's me sitting there going, and plus this is like me in the middle of puberty too, going, well, on first base is so and so, and it's
Dude,
just
I got a funny story too. I can mention later. But like when I my very first time being on air for 91.1 was in front of our I guess then program director I guess or manager or whatever, and I completely with the card in front of me messed up every single word that was on that thing. So I with even I can't read right. I completely messed up the thing. So I've set the bar way low, so that's probably heard way worse show. I'm a stooge when it comes to radio, so I don't know the fact that I have a podcast is completely baffles me sometimes.
yeah. But yeah, that's kind of I guess that's kind of just all how it started. One, long 20-minute story.
No, you're good, man. You're a really good storyteller. Have you ever thought about entering podcasting or anything like that?
I've thought about it, but man, just at the moment my plate's a little too full.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Cuz like you were saying, I'm a student W, I'm a full-time student. I
Mhm.
run a special show once a week. And then on top of that, I'm also the program director for KWTS. So I
Oh
got to
wow.
go through and yeah. So at the moment, I'm burning CDs every day.
Okay, so a little bit about that. You said you said a few things I kind of want to get into if you don't mind. You
Yeah.
talked about you are a program director and you have your own so kind of just to break that down a couple of those things down a little bit. So first thing that kind of I want to take into consideration is that you said you have your own right on
Yeah.
KWTS.
Yeah.
So how long is it? First, how long has that been going? And two, like what's your show about? Like what's the premise of your show? Like your radio show?
Okay. So the show actually goes back to me working at KEYE. And so whenever this was kind of my arrangement I made with my boss. So there was nothing going on during the summer, so there's really no reason for me to be working for him. And he, I'd asked him. I said, "Well, hey, what do you think about me coming out for 2 hours, a 2 hours a night, Monday through Friday, and hosting my own like evening show and stuff out there?" And he said, "Well, what are you going to play?" I said, "Well, it's going to be kind of your not mainstream country music."
Hmm.
And he said, "Well, okay." And he said, "Well, I'm not going to pay you though for it." I said, "Well, that's fine with me. I just want to get experience." And I think that's the big thing that a lot of people miss out on. I mean, yeah, it's nice to get paid, and eventually you do need to start getting paid for stuff for what you do.
Hmm.
But
For sure.
a lot of people just dip out on it because, oh, well, it's need money. It's like I get that, but I mean, I would work a 40-hour week with the county, and then I'd go out there at night and do my show. And so I did my show and everything, and that started the same summer that started my summer going into my senior year.
Hmm.
And so I did that there for a while, and then I got to Canyon, and I quit doing it until I'd go home for the summers. And
Yeah.
this year, man, dude. So um, KWTS. The format for it is college indie rock,
Yeah.
and I mean, some people can tell just by listening to me talk. That's not how I roll. But
That's all good.
yeah,
No,
no,
trust me. Whenever I did the radio for one semester, and I I listen to rock, but if you count me as a rock fan, that would put if you said Carter to listen like likes rock, that would be like a pretty bold statement because
yeah,
like I'm not the biggest rock fan. Not that I hate it. It's just I grew up with two other brothers that listen to hip hop all the time.
oh yeah,
So I came from like kind of like you and I kind of cut I think from the same cloth a little bit. That's one of the experience of it. Even though I wasn't getting paid, that's just sort of like that experience in the long run. You could have a totally different opinion. You can disagree with me, but it feels like if you just as long as you get an experience with it, you that will pay you dividends in the long run. That'll pay you more in the
oh
long run.
yeah, oh yeah,
So like you said though, that you do need to get paid at some point. But if you're just high school student, whatever, getting starting out, it feels like that can really as
yeah,
long as you get as long as you get your foot in the door. That's what I was looking at that as. You know.
yeah. And I mean, back to the high school student thing. A lot of people, you gotta, man. I don't know who your audience is for this podcast, but I guess I'm talking to high school students at the moment. You just don't take yourself too seriously. I mean, that's the main thing. I mean, like with KUIE, I was working out there. All I was doing was sitting on my butt and pushing a button. I mean, and a lot of people, there was one kid that I got him a job out there doing what I was doing. And he was complaining about it like, oh, well, I deserve to be paid more. No, you don't.
Yeah.
You're sitting on your butt for an hour pushing a button. I mean, I was making a minimum wage. It's,
Yeah.
still something, but no. So, anyways,
Yeah.
what question were we at originally?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. That is a good question. I think we were talking about. I mentioned how we were talking about experiences, like
Oh,
how
yeah.
we got into it and everything like that. Like our experiences starting, starting young
Oh, yeah. We
and
were talking about special show.
your show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, anyways, after that long interlude, all right. So, and then I started doing, so I did the radio class for like 3 semesters. And then I started, I'd called games before, and we got this
Yeah.
brand new remote kit for KWTS to do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I told Dr. McFarland, um, I said, hey, I just want to do this. And I said, well, let's start calling football games. I haven't ever called a football game before, but I know football, and we'll just see what happens. And so I got
It's
my
kind
friend Jacob Toon to do it with me, and we did all the home games this season. And
which is
man,
pretty awesome though, because like I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's pretty awesome. I listened to a couple games, and I was like, man, this is really great considering it's your first time. Because that was a big move, like going to Dr. McFarland, like, hey, I had this, with an idea, and just him giving the green light. That's a pretty big thing, man. So
yeah.
you did really good considering, really great your first, season at home games.
Well, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. But no, and I mean, the other thing is that I'd like to work in like um kind of local radio
Hmm.
after college and all that. So, and a lot of those local stations they carry high school sports. So it's a handy skill to be able to call those games. Um so yeah, that was kind of my main motive behind it. But no, we did all the home games this season and 2 away games, and
Yo,
about I think we were only in the first quarter of um this game, and I just sat there. I went, "Crap, man! I miss doing this." And I talked to my boss or to Johnny Story and Dane Glenn, and I said, "Hey, are we going to bring back special shows?" And they said, "Yeah, you want to do something?" And because I was already at the time, I was the head tech room assistant,
oh
and
yeah.
or if you ask Randy Ray, I'm assistant uh, to the assistant engineer or something like that. I don't know. It was a really like fancy sounding title and all that. But so
Hey,
yeah, so
Hey,
Do what?
kind of like the office, dude. Like, hey, you're kind
Yeah.
of like Dwight. You're assistant to the general manager, whatever, assistant to the whatever.
Yeah.
You weren't the assistant. You're just assistant to the general manager.
Yeah.
But you're not that. You're much more. Obviously, you were more prestigious up there like that,
Yeah.
though.
No, in that it was a real manager position because I'd have to make everybody's schedules for working, and I was basically the middleman between Johnny and the tech room,
Hmm.
and so a lot of the stuff, I'd have to deal with, uh, like kind of blacklisting kids and stuff if they didn't get their stuff in all right. Um, which I mean that was kind of playing, not really the bad guy, but I guess the tough guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, but so, anyways, I was already on staff with them and all that. And they, I told them, I said, I'd really like to bring back, or I'd really like to start a special show here. Cause up
Yeah.
until now, I'd been doing it in Perryton just during the summers.
Yeah.
And they said, okay. And they said, well, what are you thinking about? I said, well, I want to do a country show, but I want to do country music that's like your Texas country music and all that stuff.
Hmm.
And they said, okay, well, we're going to be bringing back special shows anyways, what we talked about. And so the good thing is that since I was also like, so last fall, so fall 2021, I was pretty much split between the tech room, being head lab assistant there, and like partially being the program director for KWTS. So
Hmm.
like Mondays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, I'd work in the tech room all the time. But then
Yeah.
Tuesdays was my day. I'd go down to KWTS and do logs and stuff and schedule the radio station to where it's always playing and all that stuff. So yeah,
Hey, I don't mean to. I want to take this back to just a couple sentences, if that's okay with you. You
yeah.
mentioned like you had experience, in your hometown of doing like playing like old Texas songs or anything like that, like songs like that. What do you like? Can you kind of like explain? I don't know if so much to my audience or to the audience if I have an
Oh, okay.
audience, but
Yeah.
can you kind of explain like a little bit? Can you kind of explain like a little bit more like what kind of music that is? Because I'm trying to decide like is that kind of like a George Strait type music? Like what kind of music are you talking about?
Well, okay. So, all right. Texas music, whenever I say it, I'm talking about Texas country. And that's pretty much the stuff that's not mainstream in Nashville. Um, but it's also started to just because of how everything else is. And because it originally started out as a bunch of guys that tried to go to Nashville and it just didn't work for them. And they're all like, well, screw it. We'll just do our own stuff in Texas because we have the ability to. Um, like, uh, do you know who the Dixie Chicks are?
Yes.
Okay, so you know
Or
Natalie
like
Maines. She's
yes,
the
that
lead
sounds
singer for 'em?
familiar. Yeah.
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 So her dad was one of the pioneers of Texas country music. His
Oh
name is
wow.
Lloyd Maines. He's actually in the West Texas Walk of Fame in Lubbock. I actually saw his little plaque
Oh
thing
wow.
last
That's
weekend when I
awesome.
went. It was kind of cool. Yeah,
That's
it's
pretty
just
cool.
across the street from the Buddy Holly Center.
Yeah.
But yeah, it started out as that, and then it also became a big part of the outlaw country music movement in the '70s because Willie Nelson, started growing his hair out, hanging out with the hippies a little bit more, and so he moved back to Texas. And I mean, he was always from Texas, and so yeah, he moved back to Texas and started hanging out there and playing, and his crowd was pretty interesting. It was hippies and bikers,
Yeah. It's
like
kind of
hippies,
odd.
bikers, and cowboys. Yeah, especially back then, didn't mix.
No.
And no, and so Waylon Jennings, who was also a big guy in the country music scene at the time, he at the time, man, he's a legend. Let me take that back. But
Dude. But yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest country fan, but let me tell you, like when I got one of my first cassettes was a Waylon Jennings one.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I found it
yeah,
somewhere. I was like, man, I gotta have. I mean, I knew he was such a legend, even though I'm not the biggest country fan. I'm like, I gotta at least have one for sure, because it's say I have one, and listen to it all the time. So,
Yeah.
I get to prove like just to say what you said. He is a legend for sure. I think.
Oh yeah. And he's one of those guys that really was just an outlaw. I
Hmm.
mean, there was one deal where uh I'm gonna have to check my story on this real quick. But there I heard something where he was part of like the We Are the World.
Oh yeah,
But
that big group that sings, right?
yeah, with all the
Big,
we are the
big.
world, we
Yeah.
are the children. Let me find it real quick.
So while you're looking that up, I guess I'll kind of think like if I remember correctly too, um, was I think Waylon Jennings and Willie Nelson were in a big group at one point too, right? They like Johnny
Yeah,
Cass and like they formed like this big mega group, if I remember correctly, right?
yeah. It was Johnny Cash, Waylon Jennings, Willie Nelson, and Chris Christopherson, who's actually the so out of that group, Chris Christopherson and Willie Nelson are the only two still around. Christopherson, man, sadly, he's one of my favorite songwriters. He actually retired from touring
Oh,
not too
really?
long ago. Yeah, so Willie Nelson's the only one out there touring now. Um, but yeah, so okay, back to the whole Waylon Jennings just being a total outlaw, anything. So he was part of the We Are the World
Hmm.
originally, but he had a dispute with one of the lyrics of it, and so he just walked out of it.
Mm. Oh, really?
Yeah, and there was even an interview thing where he was supposed to go on some sort of talk show with them, and the guest before kept taking too long, and he said, 10 minutes, we're leaving. 5 minutes, we're leaving. And then he just got up and left.
Oh, wow.
I mean, dude, the dude was just an all around, just, he was a bad dude.
He
But,
was just he
and
was
I
just calling
mean,
all he's calling he's calling his own shots. It's like, you know
oh, yeah.
what? He's doing whatever he wants, truly at heart.
Yeah. No. And I mean, that was the thing with, because he and Willie Nelson were buddies and everything, back to the outlaw country music movement.
Hmm.
And so Willie came down to Texas and, he said, "Oh man, wait, you got to get down here. They love it here." And Waylon Jennings went down and he started playing with them, and he couldn't believe it. Just the crowd that was uh, really getting into him was the bikers, the cowboys, and the hippies all together, and so it just blew him away. And he's like, "All right, well, this is where I need to be." And then
Yeah.
I'm trying to think, it was in the '70s whenever they put out the Outlaws album,
Yeah.
and it had Waylon Jennings on it, Willie Nelson, Tom Paul Glazier. I feel like Jesse Coulter was part of it too, but could be wrong. Excuse me. But
You're good.
no, and an interesting thing, if man, we're just really going off here, aren't we? But
Man, this podcast has no tracks. So feel free to go wherever you want to go.
so but with so Waylon Jennings and Jesse Coulter got married, and they had a kid together. His name is Shooter, and Shooter Jennings is a pretty big name now.
Yeah.
Not really for his for his music if you know about it. Like
Hmm.
he's a pretty big as far as that front goes, but he's also gotten to where he's become a pretty big time record producer.
Yeah. Oh,
And
really?
yeah, and even with I mean, dude's a spitting image of Waylon Jennings, except he's quite a bit shorter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like you remember that Johnny Cash movie Walk the Line?
Yes. Yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
with Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a scene in there where Johnny Cash and it's supposed to be Waylon Jennings are sitting in a motel and they're like strung out on drugs and pills and all that stuff.
Mhm.
The guy that played Waylon Jennings in that was Shooter Jennings.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I mean, there was
I
he
never
put
knew
out
that.
an album. Yeah. So he usually, whenever you see Shooter Jennings, he has just long, kind of just long black hair. And, but he cut his hair a couple of years ago whenever he was doing this, the self titled album he has called Shooter. And it's a really great album, dude. You need to check it out. It's just,
Oh, for sure.
yeah, it's great. But, he was doing this album and he cut his hair short. And whenever you'd sit there and like see the posters of him and stuff, he would because I was looking because I have a poster somewhere in my room.
Yeah.
I don't know where it is, but no, he looked just like Waylon. It was crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
That's crazy, man. I
Um,
never knew that.
yeah, no, it's man, it's just that's one of my favorite things to do is just learn about the history of all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm kind of that's pretty crazy all that information you just gave out. Like I didn't know most of that stuff. Just the fact that you're just like an encyclopedia just throwing stuff out, man. It's like it's completely like complete knowledge. I'm like, man, that's pretty cool. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Well, thanks. I mean, most people just get tired of it and tell me to shut up about after about half a minute of it.
You know what? So you're on a podcast, so feel free just to do the opposite and just say as much as you want about whatever you want. So the floor is yours.
All
So
right.
kind of want to pivot a little bit. Do you think I know and radio as radio as a whole? I'm kind of talking just generally speaking. Has there been any setbacks? As far as like the change in radio, do you think has there been any major setbacks that you can think of, or even minor that's like stick
Yeah.
out to you?
So I work mainly with country radio. Um, that's what I want. That's what I love. And so back in Perryton, I'm also I have about like four different jobs at the same time. So I have special show program director at KWTS, and then I'm also the music director for KEYE in Perryton.
So,
And
hey, but hey, more power to
s-
you, dude.
yeah,
And you're a full time student.
yeah, full time student too. But I've got a lot on my plate. But no, so with KUIE, there's an AM station and an FM station. And on the AM station, which we now got a thing called a translator. So it translates the same thing that's on the AM side also on an FM channel.
Oh
And
yeah.
so those two, it's 1400 AM and 96.7 FM is the country station. And
Hmm.
then we have an FM station separate called 93.7 My FM. And it's like your adult contemporary hits and all that stuff.
Oh, not cool.
So what's really, I think, as far as just a music standpoint of it, is, you know, people are tired of being like told what they like and what they should like. And I
Yeah.
think that's because I mean, you look at country music radio nowadays, and man, it ain't country.
No.
That's it's got snap tracks and beats and sounding like an old man here, but it's yeah. I don't. I absolutely hate listening to it.
I could tell you too. Sorry to I keep cutting you off. I'm sorry, but
No, you're fine.
I felt like I said I mentioned I'm not the biggest country or rock listener out there, but like I could tell you like even personally like I listen to Spotify and stuff like that, and which we can get into later, but like the streaming services of it, but like even I've noticed like a change in it. Like there's people out there like Kane Brown who's kind of just changing it. Like his style of music is still I don't know if it's even country, but he's compared to like like Waylon Jennings style. It's like not the same country. It's like totally
Yeah,
like you said. There's so many different stuff
yeah,
in
and
it.
yeah, and I mean, I think that's. I mean, okay. I think it comes down to what you want to brand yourself as whenever you are a musician. And okay, this is coming from the guy once again that has no musical experience except for marching band. So you got like people that are musicians out there take this with a grain of salt. But I mean, it's you got people that are they're like, oh well, I'm a I'm a country artist, but I like to do a little bit of like rap and stuff in mine. Well, that's cool. Brand yourself as a pop artist.
Yeah.
I mean, like, golly. Okay. Luke Bryan, for example. Dadgum,
Mhm.
he was good when he first started. I loved his first album. That Rain Makes Corn, All My Friends, those were
Oh
good
yeah.
songs. Those were just party country songs, man. But now he's like, man, now I'm just really sounding old. But there was a TikTok I saw, and he was at, I guess he played Houston Rodeo maybe this week or something like that.
Hmm.
And he's sitting there shaking his butt in front of some woman, and she went there and like slapped. You would not see Waylon Jennings shaking his butt.
No.
But
Not at
I
all.
mean, I mean, golly, it's just I don't know, it's just pop. That's all it is. And I
Yeah.
mean, they all sound the same. Yeah, got my cold beer, got my truck, got my smoking hot girl, and yeah, we're going down to the lake to go mudding in
Gonna get
my
baked.
Toyota Tacoma. But
Yeah, kind of
that's my impression.
that's what I always tell my mom and my sister all the time. They're big. I might take it on the sense here a little bit after this podcast comes out, but um, they are big country fans. Like whenever like I'm in the car and I'm driving and my mom's like driving with me and I'm always playing like my music, whatever. I
Yeah.
have to emphasize my music because she doesn't like it because she's like, "Oh, I don't like this music, blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Mom, it's when I put on country, it's like the country like she likes to listen to like we just like talked about like Toyota Tacoma going mudding like all that. She's very much like it's like the same song but like different artists, different
Yeah.
voice. It's like the same message in the same song. It's like
Yeah.
it gets annoying too. That's what I think, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
probably take it on the sense much more because I'm the host. But like I don't know. That's my honest my hot take on it. So I could be wrong though. So
Yeah, well, and I mean, another thing that some people just don't realize is, I mean, okay, personally, as just a music lover,
mhm.
I love my songs that tell a story,
Me too.
and I mean, those are something, and those are easy to relate to. Um, like there's this one song I just absolutely love it, but can't play it just because it's just, you know, there's some inappropriate language in it, but and it's talking about a small town. And I mean, of course that sounds generic. Oh, all these country artists, they're
Mhm.
from a small town, but daggum, this one just hit it on the head because it's talking about how, just life in a small town and how every day 12 o'clock noon, the 12 o'clock whistle blows. And it's just,
Yeah.
it feels like it's a real story because one, I grew up in a town and 12 o'clock would roll around on Wednesday. We'd hear our tornado siren and we knew it was lunchtime.
Mhm.
But and I mean, it's just, I love those songs that tell a story, and I think there's also something to be said about the instruments that go into it.
Yeah. For
Um,
sure.
like, dadgum, man, can we cuss on this podcast?
Go right. Let it eat. Go
Oh,
for it.
okay. All right. Well, I'm a slut for any type of guitar that is has a slide with it.
For sure.
I mean, it's just like it's oh man, it's something else. Like, I mean, I just love like dobros and slide
Yeah.
guitars, steel guitar. It's just good stuff. But I mean, you know, whenever you go and see a Luke Bryan concert, you just see some guy probably, I don't know, I've never been to a Luke Bryan concert, so I can't give an accurate representation of this. But you probably just see some guy back there hitting play on tracks.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just like, that's cool. He can, because I mean, if you look at some of those artists, they truly are talented,
Mhm.
but it's just, they sold out.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's, like, okay, I'm not saying it's just to them, but I mean, like, even Texas artists can sell out. There's a guy named Pat Green,
I
and he
love.
had,
I've heard a couple of his songs. I like Pat Green.
yeah, Wave on Wave.
No,
You
I
heard
haven't
that
heard
one?
that. No, one I do know, or I actually listen to all the time is I like Texas.
Oh, yeah.
That's when I. That's my like. If I'm ever going to listen to country like that kind of that era of music,
Yeah.
I like Texas. I always play it because okay, so it's a silly reason why I asked to know. The reason why I like that song and play it and actually know the Pat Green song is because I grew up watching sports all the time, and you're like you and probably other listeners out there are like, what does this have to do? What does Pat Green have to do with sports? So I grew up watching baseball, more specifically the Texas Rangers.
Oh,
And
yeah.
anytime they won a game, they'd play "I Like Texas" by Pat Green. So anytime I play it in my car, it just makes me go back to the little kid, like younger, like
Yeah.
middle school, high school Carter of like watching Rangers play, and everything like that. So anytime I'm in my car, I'm like, oh, I want to listen to Pat Green. That's my first song I go to.
Yeah. And I mean, he had a song called Wave on Wave, and everybody says, oh, that's a sellout song. I don't think that's a sellout song. That's just a good country song.
Yeah,
But I mean, there are sellout songs.
for
Like, I
sure.
mean, um, like I said, Luke Bryan. I know we keep going back to Luke Bryan. But I mean, his first album was pretty good, and then he came on, and it's just like, dude, what are you doing here? And
Yeah.
I think Luke Bryan and yeah, Blake Shelton's my next. Yeah, Blake Shelton definitely. There's a big flop there.
Yeah.
So he had his first album that came out, and it was great, man. He had like "If This Is Austin," that's a great song. And he had like "Old Red" on his next album or something like that. But then like 2010 or something like that hit, and he's sitting there throwing in like, oh, I don't know what the word of it is, but it's like rap beats and stuff to it. And
Really.
sitting there, one of the songs, he would sit there and it would start with redneck, and it was just like the most annoying thing you've ever heard.
Oh, really? So,
Yeah, I
so,
just
so they're just kind of like really reaching for it. It sounds like.
yeah, and I think it goes back to how, geez, now I'm really just sounding like a nut. Don't worry, folks. I got my aluminum foil hat in the basement, but I think it goes back to just how big of a corporation music has gotten.
Yeah.
Because I
For,
mean, it's whenever you get to a certain point, it's all about making money, and it's not about making songs.
for sure.
And I mean, there's some studios like record companies that are great, like 30 Tigers. They're really good, and uh like they got artists like Sturgill Simpson on there, Charlie Crockett. Well, I think he might be with a different label now. But anyways, there's just some of those artists or labels that are just really good. And then there's just, those ones out of Nashville that are just like, golly.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think it's just back to that whole radio thing about changes. It's a lot of radio stations, I don't know if you know this, but a lot of them are um syndicated,
Yeah,
and
for sure.
they're part of a larger corporation.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think that's where you lose part of it. Because I mean, I
Yeah.
think there's a bit of a oh, I don't know. I guess a bit of a uniqueness about local radio. Because I
For
mean,
sure.
the radio station I work at in Perryton, it's it's been owned by the same family for about, oh, I think he said he started owning it in the 60s.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so it's
So
been in the
he.
same family for about 60 years.
Oh, wow. So it's established. There's like a mystique around it.
Yeah, we've been broadcasting since 1948 in Perryton.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
That's
but
crazy.
I mean, yeah, it's just like, I think it's just shoot.
So do you think it just? Let me ask you this real quick. So do you think it's just radio has changed and just? Or is it ultimately? I don't know if it's ultimately, but let me ask you this. So what has changed about radio? Is it just the business aspect of it, or what about radio has changed? Do you
I
think?
think it I think it is a business aspect, but I also think that it's not hip with the kids. You
For
know what I'm
sure.
saying? Because I mean, okay, AM radio, it's basically podcasts
Yeah.
all day.
It was
I
podcast
mean,
before podcast, I think. Not to put words in your mouth. That's
exactly.
what I was thinking.
No, yeah, no, dude, I mean, podcasts got their influence from AM radio. AM radio, if y'all don't know, it's just talk radio.
Hmm.
I mean, I think uh now there's some stations like KUIE where we're our AM radio, it's not really a talk radio. We just play music and farm reports because I mean that's who our demographic is. It's ranchers and farmers. And so, they like country music and they also uh they like knowing what the farm reports are.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah. Let me ask you this too, quick, since we're kind of on the topic about radio and business and everything of radio and stuff like that of that nature. I'm kind of bringing another aspect of it. With streaming services and like streaming services and online radio and stuff like that. Where do you see like the solo radio progressing? Like, where do you see it going if it's going anywhere?
Well, so man, I always hate it when he says it, but I think he's right. Uh Randy Ray always says, you know, And he does this thing where he puts his hand behind his neck and all that. He goes, radio's it's in a weird place right now. And I'm like, well, yeah, it is. But
Yeah.
um, and I think he's right about that. It is in a weird place because I mean, like I said earlier, podcasts are just AM radio that you can hear
Yeah.
whenever you want to. And there are some radio stations that I saw that are doing this, and I think, dadgummit, I think it's a good idea, where they're taking podcasts and they're airing them at certain times and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And I mean, I think that's a genius idea. Um, and so I think that that's how you do that. And I also think something else that these people that have radio shows, um,
Yeah.
they're I think if you have radio shows and you record it and then you put it online somewhere, hey, that's a podcast right there. And I
Yeah.
mean, I can't remember because I'm part of like a Facebook broadcasting group or something like that. And they
Hmm.
had talked about I guess Spotify is maybe trying to roll out a thing. I could be wrong on this totally, so take it with a grain of salt. But they're trying to roll out a thing where it's like a live show on Spotify.
Yeah.
And I mean,
Oh, really?
that's radio.
Yeah. It's just crazy. Like, kind of, I guess, piggyback on what you're kind of saying somewhat. I remember back when I graduated from high school once upon a time in 2016.
Oh yeah.
So to push it back years before that, when I was in middle school, and like, gosh, I started middle school in August of like 2009, and I didn't finish until like May of 2012. So those 3 years, I remember hearing Pandora for the first time and really hearing like, oh, it's online radio. Like, what's online? Like, what? Like, how is there a radio? And like, I didn't understand. Like, as a kid, I was play stupid and didn't know anything. But
Yeah.
I was a football player. Like, oh, I'm going to practice, and like, oh, I'm listening to the song before practice, like on Pandora. I'm like, what's all this stuff? And now I'm about to graduate from college, and there's people like Joe Rogan who has a podcast and his own podcast on Spotify now for like millions and millions of dollars. It just
Yeah.
here you go. Like Spotify's like an online platform. Like here you go. I'm gonna just let you air it on here. Do whatever you want. And then there's another name out there. I don't know if you're familiar with him. His name is Pat McAfee, who just has his
Yeah.
own streaming show. Who just got signed for his like show podcast, whatever you want to call it, for like a 4 year deal. If I could speak right, that's like hundreds of $1 million. I'm like, that's crazy. The fact that we've came just from like 2009, 2010 to
Yeah.
2012 or 2022, excuse me, rather, and we're at the point where it's like, wow, radio is so crazy compared, like just radio in its general has come a long way. Really, I think
Yeah.
not really a long way. Just the fact that stuff has come a long way, and radio is still, I guess, where it's at.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that going back to those, radio shows, there's some of them that are then they're taking total advantage of turning their stuff into podcast. Like the Bob and Tom show,
Hmm.
they uh they do their stuff like where it's a podcast. Trying to think what else. There's a couple others that would do podcasts, and I mean it was I think NPR, a lot some people just don't like NPR. I used to be
Yeah.
one of those people, but now I'm starting to realize, daggum, they're pretty smart. Um,
Yeah.
but I mean, they're one of those people where a lot of their stuff is put online for podcasts.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, there's a show that they used to do called Car Talk, and
Really.
do you have you heard about this?
Not about. I've heard some weird stories, not weird, like weird stuff with NPR, but not about car
Okay,
shop.
so
No,
they had a show called Car Talk, and
car talk.
you remember Cars, right? Like the movie.
Yeah,
So those two Rusties guys
yeah,
for don't drive like my brother.
yeah.
And it's like, because he's always lit. Those two guys, those were actually the hosts of Car Talk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They were, yeah. So,
Never
and,
knew that.
yeah, no, yeah, they were, hosts of Car Talk and everything. And, that's on, like, whenever they say, don't drive like my brother, don't drive like my brother. And, that was like their actual, like, sign off for their show and stuff. And, I don't think you can find their podcasts anywhere anymore, but they were funny. Like, so they get people calling in with legitimate car problems, and they'd be like, "So this is what you want to do," and they give the most outrageous answer, but they were right. Like the way that they explained it was just so goofy, and then they were like, but you're right though."
Yeah.
And I remember they would do these like weekly riddles because it was a weekly show, and they would say, "Send your answer to us on the back of a $5 bill, addressed," and they give the address and everything, and it was just goofy because they were funny.
Yeah.
And and I also think that people complain about how music and stuff can't be played on air. And it's not an issue of it's not good enough, which I mean some of it isn't. I mean it's like, dude, I heard one song the other day whenever I was reviewing music, and like there was like an underchorus of it, like how there's that insane in the membrane,
Yeah.
that deal. So it was
Mm.
something like that, but it was saying ticked off at the TikTok. And I was immediately like, dude, eject that CD. That's going straight in the trash.
Yeah.
But and I mean, it's just like, it's an issue of your language.
Yeah.
And I don't think people know that. And I think either somebody has to budge, either the podcasters or the government.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like with you know, you took the radio class, there's this big thing called the FCC,
Yeah.
and they have a lot of regulations about what can be said on air, and
Mhm.
most of it's at least for just the DJs and the on-air talent. But the thing that some people don't realize is it's public airwaves,
Mhm.
and so if the public calls and has a complaint about a song you're playing,
It's-
and it's a legitimate complaint, you got to take it off.
Yeah.
Like
It's crazy.
I had somebody call the radio station in Perryton whenever I did music one time, and now part of this was on me, honestly. Um, it was Dua Lipa's song "Levitating."
Oh, I haven't heard that one before. I don't think.
You haven't heard Dua Lipa's "Levitating"?
Maybe if I
Car-
that doesn't sound right, but maybe if I heard it, I may like.
yeah,
Oh, maybe I may have to hear it.
but there's a line in it, and I missed it, and I don't know how I missed it. I guess I just wasn't paying attention, or they kind of just blended together. But she said "ass" in it, and
Really?
so yeah, I was just like, okay, and I just went about it, and I was listening to it one day, and I go, oh, hang on a second, and I went out there to the radio station to fix the audio and stuff,
Mhm.
because the easiest way to do it without having to worry about getting a radio edit, because I mean, for small market radio stations like us, it's really hard for us to get record labels to send us their music.
Mhm.
And so with like the Dua Lipa one, I had to just go out there and I just reversed where she said ass and fixed it. But I was sitting out there, and the guy that runs the FM morning show said, "Oh, you fixing it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yeah, we had a complaint about that one." I said, "Oh, for the language?" He said, "No, they just didn't like it." I said, I said, "Well, we can't do anything about that. I mean, did anybody else call and complain about it?" He said, "No." And I said, "All right, well then that's that."
Yeah.
Now, if it was like a totally vulgar song, like talking about doing all sorts of uh, nightly activities, then yeah, that's definitely don't play that. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's, it's I don't know. I don't mean to sound like just some boomer, but I think
I think it just.
people have gotten just too what's it called? I don't know, worried about what you hear. And I mean, it makes
Yeah.
sense to worry about what you hear.
Do you think it's just a different generation, different
I
times
think
were just getting
so.
different?
I think so, but I think there's also something to be said that um there's some artists that they cuss in all their songs like
Yeah.
consistently. And it's like, why? That doesn't do anything though. It doesn't like, add to it or take away from
Yeah.
it. And I mean, it's people that are like, "Oh, well, it's my freedom of speech." It's like, "No, you're being an idiot because you're shooting yourself in the foot on at least getting radio airplay."
Yeah.
But I
Do you think?
mean, do it.
do you think like when you're explaining all that, it kind of made me think like with like internet, like I mentioned internet radio earlier. There's like
Yeah,
Sirius XM and all that that kind of throws like you said FCC for the people who don't understand. They have a basic understanding like there's certain guidelines and rules like when I was a radio. You still do it, but when I was there, that we had to follow in
yeah.
order stuff. Like there's regulations and language is one of them, and this and that. But speaking of language and Sirius and all that, like, do you think like people more often not want to go to Sirius where they can have more of that? Oh, I have more creative control because I can do this X Y Z can speak this way on that compared to like regular AM FM radio.
Yeah, and I mean that's because so for your listeners that don't know, SiriusXM operates outside of the FCC because it's a paid service.
Yeah,
Yeah, and so the deal with radio and TV channels in general is they have certain guidelines they have to follow because it's public airwaves, and that's why like channels like HBO and stuff like that on TV they can totally get away with showing full nudity and all that stuff on
hmm
TV because it's a paid service.
yeah.
But I mean, you go back to it. I think Howard Stern was the real reason that SiriusXM got started was because
He's like one of the
he kept
OGs of it all.
yeah he kept getting hit with FCC stuff and he got tired of it and was like, SiriusXM was like, hey, you could do this and you don't have to worry about the FCC. And he's like, of course I'll do that. And I mean, that's crazy smart. That's what he should do.
Yeah,
I mean, honestly, I'm on the side of anti FCC on this deal. I
yeah.
mean, it's just like, you know, I don't think you should, I think that you should at least be decent when you're on air because
hmm
I mean, it's a professional aspect of it too. But I mean, if you got a product, you should be able to sell it where you want to sell it.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, that's just
I agree with what you're saying too. I understand where you're coming from. I totally agree too. Because like, even for my example, my podcast, I edit it on. I try to make it professional as possible,
yeah,
and I post it on Spotify and YouTube and things of that nature. And you kind of bring up a good point from earlier. I kind of want to do a recall back to what you said when you asked me because if you can swear, and I
yeah,
said yes because when I post this to YouTube and Spotify and stuff like that, it can be because there's already songs on there and stuff like that that allows that language and
right,
stuff like that to go through.
yeah,
So, what's most people may not remember or know that people are paying for the internet and people are like, well, how does that fly on? How does the language fly on that kind of stuff? Well, you're
they're
paying for
paying
internet,
for it.
you're paying for it still, and that's why I'm like, I don't even though I personally I don't swear, I don't cuss.
Yeah,
I allow my guests to because I want them to have that freedom of being who
right,
they afford to be. And it
yeah,
feels like that's one thing I'm like, yeah, just I don't care if you how you talk, dude. Just you be
right.
you. I want it to be natural. And most people are like that with music. I'm like, feels like, oh, I'm gonna cut it right here and just stick. I want to get all that stuff off the radio, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, it's just like it's one of those deals where it's you know, it's your money, you're spending it. If you don't like what you're spending it on, which is, stuff that's profane and then that's on you.
Yeah. Like they kind of now something I wanted to be the one that's about the banter. I don't mean it to be, but like, oh, gosh, now, gosh, I'm listening to you, but no, I'm just kidding. No, but no, I feel like they kind of with my podcast. It feels like I want it to be fun, kind of like a free place to go to and listen and hang out, whatever. But
Yeah.
like they tell us play, they saw the explicit thing, but yeah, Spotify Spotify is a subscription that they pay for, and also YouTube is based off internet, which they're already paying for anyway. So that's kind
Yeah.
of how I view it. So, but nonetheless, speaking of things that you don't have to pay for and listen to and have great content, is your show on KWTS.
Oh yeah.
Kind of a
Yeah.
thing I try to bring back. So how'd you decide? Like, you kind of talked about how you got started and everything like that, and how you kind of chose your music. But I just want to ask, like, what skills do you think you developed that helped you to be successful with KWTS and all these different radio stations?
Um so something that I do with my music because like I was saying earlier, I like stuff to tell a story,
Hmm.
and so there's a what I like to do with my if I can find my bag. Hang on one second. Let me get some. It'll prove my point.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so just quickly grabbing something real quick. I'm doing a little bit of commentary. I
Okay.
think
Do what?
nothing. I was gonna make a joke quick, but I was gonna say like, um, I with the felt with that air that with that time being weekend, that I think I want to play a little track if I can. If I don't get copyrighted or striking down on YouTube, that I may get a play a little bit of Nickelback Rockstar to fill that dead time.
But no, with my stuff, I like to so I like my songs to tell a story, but I also like my playlist for my show to tell a story.
Yeah.
And I mean, like going back to this, you know, oh yeah, looking back at one of my playlists from a couple weeks ago, I went from a song called "Hey Baby," which is about a guy and a girl taking a road trip and stuff, and seeing everything, and then I went to a song literally called "Road Trip," kind of about the same thing, and then did another song called "Amarillo Highway." It's just about driving, man.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, then I did later on. Let's see here. Yeah, so I did this. Man, I did a lot of driving songs, but no, it's there was this one song by the Drive By Truckers, and called "Where the Devil Don't Stay," which is actually the title of their new book that's out. That I got that for my birthday, and I've been reading it. It's pretty good.
Oh,
It's kind of
nice.
like a biography about the band. But
That's pretty cool.
yeah, but it was I went from 3 a.m. like the Matchbox 20 song.
Hmm.
There was a cover of it by a guy named Casey Donahue, and man, that his version of it in Matchbox 20s is like tied for which one I like the most. But so I went from that song where it's talking about a girl uh not really wanting him to be there and all that, and then I went to a song called "Where the Devil Don't Stay" about being in some shady business, and then to a song called "Super 8" talking about how he doesn't want to die in a Super 8 motel,
All
and
right.
then I kind of wrapped it up with a song called "Welcome to Hard Times," which I think kind of encompasses all those
Yeah.
songs together. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think the biggest skill I learned from it is planning.
Yeah.
And I think there's some people that they do a show and they're just like, "There's my stuff,
Hmm.
enjoy it." And it's like, well, I want to know that somebody put in effort to make this. Then, you know, I I enjoy listening to people's work.
Me too.
And I mean, I think it's a deal where I want to listen to their work of like what they, you know, deciding that you want to do something with your show is kind of a big part of that. But I
Yeah.
think planning's the biggest skill that I learned. And then, yeah, that's probably the biggest. Yeah.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. I kind of thought the same thing too whenever I did the radio class or anything like that for at WT. It's like I know those songs are already programmed in there, but the thing is though, before like they didn't remodel, they just added like more like at the new screen or anything like that that you and I talked about the other day. But
Yeah.
so before that they had two monitors stacked to each other, and I don't know if they still have the ability now, but when I was there you could actually like plug in songs if you wanted to. Like if someone wanted to make a request, like, oh yeah, I want to listen to Pearl Jam today, or Dave Matthews, do you have Even Flow by Pearl Jam? Yeah, like blah
Yeah.
blah blah. I could add this in. So you were able to add songs in like that way. So there would be times where like I didn't know that was a function. Like you can add songs in until I actually had
Oh
my
yeah.
first phone call. Yeah. So I thought like I thought you played like you just let the songs play and you had your jog break or your breaks whatever to go on air. So um I always did that until I realized. someone made their first, request. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. So there'd be times where like I go in, I probably shouldn't say this on air, but anyways, so there'd be times where I go and be like, you know what, I want to listen to Dave Matthews. So I play like a Dave Matthews song, so I'd put it in. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this feels pretty cool. So I'll play based on how I kind of did that, what you did, the soul. I took the soul of that, but instead of writing it down, like this is kind of how I'm feeling. Like, so maybe, oh, that'd be cool if I put this song in here. And like from there, I took myself as like, okay, I'm the one that's driving in this car, or I'm the one in the office listening to this
Yeah.
music. How would I feel? How would I want to feel? I want to feel
Oh
more
man, now you
upbeat.
got me.
Yeah.
Ah, shoot. Dadgummit, Carter.
So
Um,
so that's how I took it as like, you know what, I really like. I'm sorry, but like that's how I took it. Like I
yeah.
want to put myself as like, even though I'm the DJ, I want to put myself in the shoes of the person who's listening to these songs. Not that you weren't, you're doing a great job. You
Yeah.
deserve to be where you're obviously, but I'm just a podcaster. What do I know about music? But um,
Ah, come on.
so there'd be times where play, a song from the neighborhood, or play a song from 2, 3 songs later, I played Dave Matthews, and 2, 3 songs I played Nirvana, like Nirvana. So there was no rhyme or reason why I was playing the songs that I was playing in that order. It just
Yeah.
okay. There's maybe that one song that one day like that person was looking forward to, and I played like boom, like Ants Marching by Dave Matthews. Play that song, boom. I think that's more of a upbeat song. So maybe on that
Yeah.
one car ride to wherever they're going to, maybe that one upbeat song where they're drinking their coffee that morning, they got to listen to that one song, or maybe a few songs that they got to listen to. That's how I kind of looked at it. There's no real game plan going into it. I had to be in the moment. Like that's how I was, like
Yeah.
being in the moment to how I feel, kind of going into it. So
Yeah.
kind
No,
of,
I mean, I totally get that. Like, sorry to totally cut you off there, but during the summer, whenever I do my show, I would go in with absolutely no plan whatsoever.
yeah,
And my show is just like, but I mean, like now that I'm like, planning it all out and all that, I feel like it's a much better, like well put together show. Um, and I think that, kind of mind if I plug something?
go right ahead. The last few questions I have for you are about plugging. So go right ahead and plug as much as you want. I'll ask whatever
um,
takes over.
we're actually changing our format for KWTS.
Oh really?
Yeah, we're gonna go all 90s. So if it was released in January 1st, 1990, all the way until December 31st, 1999, it's free game.
Oh really?
Yeah,
Oh,
and
is this an KWTS exclusive that you're dropping right now? I'm just kidding.
oh, I wouldn't tell it. I wouldn't say that.
My
I
mom
mean,
like because if you were, this podcast does not deserve that at all. So thank you.
oh,
That's not an exclusive. You're breaking any news.
but I mean, don't worry. I cleared with my bosses. They're okay with me dropping this. But
Well, I've messaged Dan Glenn Litter on Facebook or
oh
something.
yeah,
I'll thank him. I'll
yeah.
give him big thanks.
No, but I mean, we're switching to an all 90s format. We don't have an exact date yet because we got to get everything put together. It's a big deal just going from one format to the other.
hmm When you
Um,
sorry, quick question that comes to mind. When you say all '90s like format, like what do you talk? Like are you talking about like still sticking with rock music, or what do you like? What do you mean sticking with like all '90s music?
like anything.
Really?
Like we're playing country, pop, blue or not bluegrass. I don't know. I might sneak a few bluegrass tunes in there. I'm the one that's helping put in music, so I might have to sneak a few in there.
Hey, play some new Luke
But like,
Bryan. Oh, he was in the '90s. Never mind.
he wasn't in the 90s. Come
But
on.
I know. Sorry,
If
I'm
he
just
was in
using
the
stuff.
90s, he'd probably still be okay in my book.
I kind of got
But
lucky. I kind of got lucky. It's a quick story before you let you go on, but so I've been to a few handful of concerts in my time. I just
yeah,
want to say this to see get your reaction before you move on. My very first concert was Florida Georgia Line, right before when they were getting big, like right before they got big. And then my last concert, I could tell by your face reaction. Um, uh, the most recent concert it was been a couple years. It was pre-COVID before my went to my last concert. I want to see how your reaction on this one was actually a country concert. I've been to two country concerts. The first one was Florida Georgia Line. The last one was
yeah.
pre-COVID. Was what's his name? Garth Brooks. That's the one in Lubbock. So that's the one I got to go to. So
Oh,
I felt like I think I got two different spectrums, but I don't know.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you feel about that. So, but I had to tell you that just before you went on.
Man, I hate Florida Georgia Line. But
Hey,
yeah.
I didn't know who they were until I got there, and I only knew one of their songs. So if that makes
Oh,
sense.
sure.
Hey, speaking of radio,
I'm gonna have to do
speak,
what?
speaking of radio, the only one song I heard on the radio was "Cruise" because the radio bumped played it 80,000
Yeah.
times a day. So that's the only
Yeah.
song that's the only song I knew from theirs. And they played it at the very end during the encore. So I'm like, yeah, that's the one song I knew, and they played at the very end of the encore.
Yeah. But
Sorry to cut you off to
yeah.
tell you that long
Oh
story.
no, dude, you're fine. But no, yeah, you definitely did. I don't know. I personally just man, I'm not much of a Garth Brooks fan. He's
Really?
just I think he just gets overplayed.
Yeah, I can see
But
that.
yeah, because I mean, if you ever go to a dance, the last song you're ever probably going to hear is "The Dance" by Garth Brooks.
Oh, I thought you were gonna say another one. The other one they wrote the
Oh,
"Soft in Boots." That
oh
one,
yeah,
Friends in Low Places.
yeah, friends. You know, so this is just a fun little deal. Mark Chestnut. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's another big '90s country guy.
That
He
sounds real.
actually had that song first.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
So
but they
Garth Brooks ruined his black tie affair. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
but no,
Teasing.
now you got me on a Garth Brooks thing. I have a whole bunch of different Garth Brooks things. But
Hey,
there's a deal where like I can't remember if I don't know if I'm remembering this correctly, but Mark Chestnut had it at the same time that Garth Brooks had it, but Mark cut it first. And
oh,
so it
really?
was going to be Mark Chestnut's single off of his album that had like Bubba Shot the Jukebox and stuff like that on it. But
Really?
yeah. But so since they were I think they might have been part of the same label, maybe. Could be
Really?
wrong on that.
That's
But
crazy.
they decided, well, hey, you already got a pretty good song with, you know, Bubba Shot the Jukebox, so why don't you do that one and then Garth can have uh
Friends in Low Places.
yeah, Friends in Low Places. But and
That's wild.
personally, I didn't know this until like this year, and I've listened to it. Man, I kind of think I like the Mark Chestnut version better.
Oh, really?
But
I have to check that one out. I don't think I've ever heard
yeah,
this version of it. Is it like what a sorry, we're going down the rabbit hole of Garth Brooks and everything now, but what about that was different? Like, what do you like about it that's different from Garth's version?
um, honestly, I think I like Mark Chestnut's voice better.
Oh,
He's
really?
got a little bit more I don't know, sounds a little fuller.
Yeah.
And I mean Garth Brooks is a little bit higher, but I mean the other big thing is it's a lot easier to get the Mark Chestnut version and listen to it than it is to get Garth Brooks's stuff.
Yeah, that's something like he can't play any of his music anywhere, right, or something like that.
No,
Because
that's a him deal.
that's a Garth deal, right?
That's a Garth deal.
And
I
what
mean, the
happened?
only reason
What's the story behind
so
that? Do you know?
well so it's also because of how crappy artists are getting treated by streaming services and all that.
Hmm.
Because I mean, have you ever seen that chart of how much it takes, how many streams it takes for an artist to make like a dollar?
I don't think I have. Is it quite a bit?
It's like a lot, and
That's
it's
crazy.
just
I didn't know.
yeah. So that's another thing, man, dude. Um, but hey, we're going down another one. But that's something that I always like to do whenever I go and see bands now that I'm having that I'm going to go see and stuff. Of course, go see them at live and all that. But I also want to go and buy a T-shirt or something from them
Yeah.
because that's money directly to their pocket.
Hmm. Like that's
And
something that
so I think,
they're making, not really based off like sales and everything like that, based off
yeah,
streaming services like Spotify or Apple Music and stuff like that. If
yeah,
that makes any sense.
definitely. Yeah, no, it does. But and I think that some people are just like, oh well, I'll just stream it and that's doing enough for it. It's like, no, you got to buy their crap.
Yeah.
I mean, not crap, but I mean their stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's just yeah. Um, where were we going? I don't know. Anyways, so we're just going down a Garth Brooks deal now.
Oh
So
yeah. I
he
think
had a
we're
song.
Garth Brooks. Yeah. Sorry, I was about to say something.
Yeah,
I was like, Garth Brooks. Yeah, I forgot about Garth Brooks. I'm sorry.
but no, there's a song he is. It's called Beer Run.
I probably heard it,
It
but I probably
yeah, he
forgot
did it
about it
with
too.
George. He did it with George Jones, and
Oh wow.
everybody knows Garth Brooks's version. You know, BWRUN Beer Run. But there was a guy that wrote the song Beer Run before Garth Brooks did it.
Dang. So did Garth Brooks
And
write anything?
dude,
I'm just
honestly, I
kidding.
couldn't tell you. I'm not
Just
too
kidding.
sure about that.
I'm
Just
just kidding.
we're gonna blank that part out.
Beep. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. No, but
I'm just kidding. Don't sue me, Garth, please. I have zero money.
come after everything you own, Carter.
Hey, go
But
after Isaiah. Go after Isaiah. Just kidding.
oh, I ain't got jack squad.
Just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I
But
don't blame my guests. Hey, blame Kristen and Carson. I don't care. They're not. Just
oh
kidding.
no, but so with Garth Steele, so there's a guy named Todd Snyder that wrote the song Beer Run originally. So he wrote it and cut it and all that stuff. And when I say cut it, it means that they recorded it. But so he cut it and all that, and it was good. They were going to put it on his album. It was going to be great. And it's really funny just to listen to Todd Snyder tell the story of it, because his deal, it sounds the exact same as Garth Brooks' deal, except his has a different story going on with it.
Oh,
So he
really?
has the BEERRUN beer run, just like Garth has.
Hmm.
But his story is about a couple of frat guys from Abilene that drove out all night to see Robert Earl Keen, and talking about all this stuff. And Garth Brooks doesn't even mention Robert Earl Keen because Garth probably doesn't even know who he is.
Hmm.
But no, and so Todd Snyder wrote his version, and then like they had it written and everything, and it was all ready to go. And then I can't remember how long it was after that, but they got a letter, or so his manager was like, "Hey man, there's Garth Brooks. He has Beer Run now." And they're all like, he's like, "Okay." And his Todd Snyder's a funny guy. He could kind of care less with how his stuff is. He just wants to play his music and kind of be left alone.
Hmm.
But he whenever he tells a story, he said, "And I said to my manager, do I need to come into town for this?" And his manager was like, "Well, if you don't want to do anything, we can do that." And he's like, "All right, well, let's not do anything about it." So that was cool and all. That's what they thought was going to be the end of it. But then what had happened is Garth Brooks's people tried to sue him for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it was funny because the guys that wrote Garth Brooks's song were the same ones that wrote Tomorrow Never Come If Tomorrow Never Comes by Garth Brooks.
Oh, yeah. That's
Yeah,
another.
that
That's
one
another
of his
big,
big
cause big one. Yeah.
yeah.
When I went to go watch him in concert, that's one of his songs that he performed. I was like, I don't think I've ever heard the song a whole lot, but that one, like, when he performed that, I felt like it was a completely like different experience from
Yeah.
the fans. It was like it was crazy.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, so the way he tells it, he's at this like conference or something
Hmm.
for songwriters, and they introduced these guys, and he didn't realize that, or no, he did know who they were, and he knew that they were the ones that wrote the Garth Brooks version of Beer Run. And so he saw him in the like elevator or hallway or something like that. He goes, "If tomorrow never comes," and he told the guy, he goes, "Man, I love that song." And Todd Snyder went and introduced himself to him, and the guy immediately goes, "Oh, you're the guy."
Oh, you're the guy.
And
Funny.
Todd Snyder goes, "Yeah, I'm the guy. You're the one that like took my song." And he said, "Technically, we didn't steal it. What they did is they like changed a few of the lyrics, and they changed a little bit of the chords." And so that's how they were able to get away with it. It's kind of a funny story because after he heard that, he goes, He said, and then after that, I realized they were a lot smarter than I was.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's a funny story. I never heard of that one.
Yeah, no, I
Kind of
encourage you to look up Todd Snyder and just he'll tell you everything. It's funny.
for sure. It kind of echoes a little bit of Under Pressure and Vanilla Ice a little bit. A little bit. I only changed with the beat of it a little bit, the drums of it.
Yeah.
That's all I did.
No, he added a beat.
No, I'm just kidding about. Oh, that's right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but Vanilla Ice Baby and Under Pressure. I'm just kidding.
Have you ever seen him like explain it? It's funny.
Vanilla Ice.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. He's like, I I feel like I lost brain cells after that interview. After that. No, I'm just kidding. But
Ah, come
so a
on, man.
couple.
Don't diss on Vanilla Ice. He was Eminem before Eminem was cool, man, you know?
Yeah, when was that? Like the '80s, maybe or late mid '80s. Just kidding. No.
Yeah.
So a couple more questions I want to ask you before we all end here and everything like that. Kind of help talk about your show a little bit. So, um, what was I going to ask you? So, what's it? I just totally left my mind. I'm sorry. I've never done that before. But I want to ask you a quick another question. I guess I kind of wrote down before. Is hopefully the other question jogs back to me. So, um, what's the listeners of today's what should listeners of today's podcast consider about radio? Like what like when if there's any podcast listeners out there solely who listen to it, like if there's anything like, oh man, I'll get back in the radio. Is there anything like I don't know what the point of this like I'm trying to ask here. I want to edit this part out.
Okay.
Okay. Beep. So if anybody wants to stay in touch with you or the show and anything like that, how can they do so?
So I do Instagram and Facebook for my show. Um let me pull up my handle real quick. So I have, my regular old Instagram one if you just want to follow me, like my personal stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's at official.isaiah.tanner. And but so my Instagram, like for the show, it's called Getting Country with Cornbread.
Getting
And
country with cornbread.
that's the name of the show. If you look up Cornbread 91.1, you should find it.
Cool. And when do you normally like air? Like when does your show go on?
It's
And what time?
Tuesday nights from 5 to 7.
5 to 7 on Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
Cool. So everybody can make sure to go listen to some Texas music and anything like that. Maybe hear some new stuff and I guess in this case
Oh
old
yeah.
stuff. I guess I don't know. So what kind of songs are like? Do you have any personal favorite songs that you play? Like you like? Oh man, I want to play more of this or
Oh
you kind of talked about
man.
how you play songs and everything like that. But is there like
Yeah.
one specific song that you're waiting for to play or whatever, or have you already played it or what's on? What's up?
Hang on one second. Let me. All right. So I had a show that was the day after Valentine's Day,
Oh yeah.
and so my first hour of it was like your love songs and stuff like that, and then the second hour was like sharp left turn. I entitled it on my paper because I wrote down all the songs I was thinking about playing to kind of help me narrow it down. So my first hour I entitled Love, of course. But my second one was called You Tried. But
Like it went from 0 to 100.
yeah, it really did. But no, and there's a song on there that I really enjoy playing. It's oh man, it's a song, it's by a guy named Gary Allen. And it's probably just one of the, as my dad says, that song has legs, which means
Oh
that
yeah.
song, like, what, not everybody's going to know who Gary Allen is, but if you hear that song, you're like, "Dadgum, that's a good song."
Yeah.
And it's called "Smoke Rings in the Dark," and that was one song. I played that, and it was just like, yeah, like that whole album of his that he did there was just perfect. And
Yeah.
so that was my favorite song probably to play on air. Well, that and then a song called "Crazy Eddie's Last Hurrah,"
Oh really?
and it was about this guy whose girlfriend left him, and he kind of went crazy, and he ended up going and killing the boyfriend, like her new boyfriend and stuff like that.
Oh
I don't know.
really?
I'm not like a mentally issue, like ailed person and everything. I personally, I just love murder songs. They're fun. I don't know. It's so I don't
No,
know. It's so
I don't think I don't think so. I'll put a disclaimer.
yeah. Well,
But
no,
no.
man. I tell you, there was I took my girlfriend to go and see Reckless Kelly, the
Oh
guys that
really?
wrote that song, and they were at Hoots Pub in November, and so I took her to see that, and that's like their biggest song. Everybody knows it,
Hmm.
and so I was like, I wonder when they're gonna play it, and then they start off playing it, and everybody, the whole crowd, just loses their minds. So they're
Yeah.
yeah, and
Going crazy.
uh, it was great. And my girlfriend, she's not much into country music. I'm working on slowly pushing her into it.
Getting her toes wet a little bit.
Yeah, but I was sitting there and I was all psyched up for it, and everybody's singing along, and then that last verse hit, and it was talking about, well, I gathered up all of my guns, and then the guy even had a pipe bomb and stuff too, and it was just, it was hilarious because
Yeah.
everybody was sitting there just yelling it out, and then I look at my girlfriend and she's just got this look on her face like, what is going on? And we're sitting there walking out of there. I was like, I promise you, it's just it was a song. Everybody's got to sing along to it.
For sure. Kind of a funny story, but yeah,
Yeah,
that reminds me a lot of a song. I don't know if you what's the name? Chase Rice. I don't know if you knew who that is or not.
I
But
know who it is. I haven't listened to much of his stuff.
yeah, but there's a song. Hold on, sorry. There's a song that he has that reminds me a lot of the one you just mentioned. It has to do with a motel though. Like there's a motel. I have to look. It's been years since I've heard the song, but if I remember that what he just said reminds me of it, and I have to send it to you. I'm not sure if it's not that it has bad language in it, like
Yeah,
swearing words, but like I don't know if it might be good for radio play. I don't know, but you have to send it. You have to listen, check it out sometime because that reminded me a
yeah,
lot of what you just said. But yeah, that's kind of crazy.
yeah. No, those I don't know. Country like okay. So country artists I think have this unique gift of making anything depressing sound really cool.
If you putting some
Like I mean,
some cool guitars in it or something.
yeah, like there's this one guy's name is Kevin Russell and he has a band called Shiny Ribs.
Mhm.
And
Great name.
yeah, no, dude, they're fun. They're fun to see in concert. But he has one song called "The Trouble with Trouble." It's a real upbeat song and everything. And there's a line in it. I'm gonna pull it up real quick. It's just funny because of how exciting the song is.
Yeah,
Trouble. Sorry
I'm
about that.
you're good. I'm just think while you're pulling it up, I'm really debating asking you one more question, but I don't know if we have enough time to go down that rabbit hole. So if you want to, we can, but if not, we can go back to my podcast another time. We'll talk about just that whole rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, I'm down. I've just pulled up the lyrics real
Oh,
quick.
cool. I'll ask you after you blow your ex. I'll ask two more questions and then probably head out.
Yeah. All right. So one like it has multiple verses in it, but one of the verses starts off with once I knew a man who wanted to take his own life, but he didn't. Now he's got a little bitty baby and a wife. And
Oh
it's such an upbeat song, and then he just hit that part. You go, hang on a second.
yeah. They had us in the first half. Just kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's
All
kind
right.
of crazy. That's the signing ribs that you said?
Yeah. Shiny ribs.
Signing ribs. Cool.
Yeah.
That's may have to maybe go find that song. But
Oh
yeah,
yeah. They he was actually sorry, bud, but he was
again,
part of a group called the Gourds back in the early 2000s, late 90s.
that sounds really
And
familiar. I don't know why.
well, they had a version, they had a country version of Gin and Juice.
Oh, that's probably why.
Yeah. But so yeah,
That's
that's
good.
my deal.
That's kind of well. So the question I was debating about asking you if you want to go down one more rabbit hole, we can.
Sure, I
Um,
got time.
so I wanted to I can edit this out, but so what's the deal with like every time you post a selfie or something like or post something on Instagram, why does link like Nickelback Rockstar always get played by Carson and Kristen? Because
So
because I always look on Instagram or anything like that, and I'm always going through like if I'm at work, all of a sudden like I'm going through my stories,
Rockstar
and then
just
I'll
shows up.
yeah, like Rockstar starts playing, like I have to like quickly play it back to back, and then my boss looks at me, he's like, "What are you doing?" Like he doesn't say, but he's like, "What's going on?" And then I'm
Yeah.
like, I wish I knew, but I don't know. I have no other better answer than I don't know.
No, so I honestly I couldn't tell you why they did it. I was uh I just because I made a joke where I unironically enjoy Nickelback. Like some of their song like Rockstar, dude, if you don't enjoy Rockstar, what's wrong? Like it's a good song.
I thought
Like
they
I
were like
mean,
I thought I meant like you were a rock star. That's what I thought. That's what they're getting at.
oh
I don't
no,
know.
I think it might be. I think that they were honestly they're just making fun of me, I think. Just teasing me, you know.
A little bit of
But
fun.
so here, let me give a bit of a backstory for your listeners. So what Carter's talking about is I'll post like a picture or something on Instagram, and if it's just me, they'll go and they'll share it on their stories and use the music thing and play Nickelback Rockstar. But dude, honestly, I was just chilling out one day after I'd like posted on Instagram the night before. Hopped on Instagram, I was like, "Oh, Christian and Carson have new stories." I started watching them, you know, tapping through them, and then I go, "Hey, that's my face. Why
Because
is it
I've
playing Rockstar?"
because I've had Carson on my podcast before, but I think it was before I like we've Carson and I he followed me out of the blue, so like I followed him back,
Yeah,
and I was like, so like, randomly like I'm like, well, who? Why is who's this? This before I met you. I think I knew of you, but I didn't know you
yeah,
personally like I do now.
yeah.
So I'm like, who's this guy? Why do they always play Rockstar? Like, what's the significance of this like guy? Like, why is he Rockstar? Like, what's going on? So from the outside looking in, I'm happy that I know the origins of it now. Like, what's the
Yeah,
point of it now? Like back then, I'm like, I'm
it
so
doesn't make
confused.
sense.
Like, it doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know
Yeah,
if it still does like a whole lot. Maybe there's a little bit more light on it, I guess. But I'm like, what's the like? Who is this guy? Is he like
yeah,
big deal? Like what's going on?
yeah. No, they just, yeah, no, they just randomly. Like, I mean, I met somebody that knew Christian, but I didn't know him, and I met him, and they go, "You're the guy."
It's
I was like,
funny.
"Yeah, I'm that guy."
Yeah, it's kind of funny because I don't like I said, I'm not like I grew up listening to Nickelback, but that's not I don't hate them or like anything like that. It's just like I don't listen to them a whole lot as much as I used to. So every time like Nickelback by or Rockstar by Nickelback comes on, I'm like, every time I hear that, I'm like, oh, it must be an Isaiah post. Come about to start. like,
Yeah, no, I mean, personally, dude, I do enjoy Nickelback songs.
do you have a
It
favorite
oh shoot,
Rockstar?
honestly, it might be because honestly, so I'm also like I enjoy ZZ Top, and so Billy Gibbons, you might know this, but Billy
Yeah,
Gibbons, you know, does the well, tell me what you want part in it,
yeah,
and so I mean, it's cool. It's a cool song.
yeah,
It's just like it's one of those songs where it's I think that song, I you know, might just be me. I think that that song could unite everybody.
yeah.
I think that could solve all of our problems.
For sure. Just play Rockstar every day, guys. That's
Yeah.
yeah.
Listen to Rockstar at 8 a.m. every morning. You're good to go.
Hey, set that as your alarm, your ringtone, your everything. You'll
Yeah.
just be set for life. But I remember growing up. I'm about to tell my age a lot here. I remember my first, um, I think intro into Nickelback was gosh, I think Spider-Man back on the
Oh
VHS.
yeah.
Yeah, so I remember buying a VHS when Spider-Man, the very first like OG like Tobey Maguire movie came out on VHS. I remember buying it and they were listening to it. The song, one of their songs, "Hero," was in it
Yeah.
with the guy from Saliva or Saliva, right?
Well, no,
Like,
it was just it wasn't Nickelback. It
no,
was
just
just
Nickel.
Chad
Was,
Kroger.
yeah, just the lead singer from Nickelback, who was in
Yeah.
the song, and I'm like, oh, that's just pretty cool. I guess at the
Yeah.
time I was a little kid, I was like, I like this song. I didn't know what they're talking about, but like I like it. And then I saw Nickelback on MTV. They were singing the first music video I saw of Nickelback was "Someday,"
Yeah.
And I was like, oh man, this is really cool. And that was my intro was because of Spider-Man and to Nickelback. Now it's like they got ZZ Top in their music videos and everything like that. So now every time I think of when I used to think of Nickelback, I would think of Spider-Man. Now sometimes it's gonna sound really weird saying out loud, but when I think of Nickelback now, I just think, okay, what did Isaiah post today? So yeah,
Oh, all right. Well, yeah,
yeah.
man. That's the origin of that.
Cool. So I had to ask, but so the first 2 seasons I've had in my podcast, I always ask a question at the end. Like the first season, I always ask a question to all my guests, and the second season it changed. So I think the last question I kind of changed again. So you're my first guest for this season, so I kind of want to ask you
Oh,
the same
okay.
question. Cool. So I kind of changed it. So uh, last question is, what is your tip for making the world a better place in your opinion? Kind of a tough question, but you can give a short answer, quick answer, or no answer.
Um, I think my opinion on the best way to make the world a better place would probably be um just be able to listen to people.
Yeah.
Because I mean, I think a lot of people, I mean, everybody has a different life story, and I
Mhm.
mean, if you listen to people, you're going to learn a little bit about them.
Mhm.
And I mean, that's something that, I'm okay. I know you really can't tell just by listening to this thing, but I enjoy just listening to people. And I'll sit there and, if I'm wanting to get to know somebody, I just sit there and listen to them.
Yeah.
And I mean that's how you get to know them. You get to understand, okay, well, this is what they're this is what they've been through, and then this is how that's affected them to make them uh that gives them that, I don't know, I guess, idea of thought.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So I
So
think if we all just listen to each other a little bit more and talked a little bit less.
for
I
sure.
know that's kind of ironic coming from the guy that's a radio show host, but
No, it makes perfect sense. I think. I mean, I always heard that. I always thought that personally too. It's like if you listen, you really can learn. Just doesn't matter what it is you're learning. You just if you listen, you can actually just get a lot of information.
yeah.
So that's really great advice. So thank you for the great answers, and great time. I mean, I had some questions that we didn't touch on, but I feel like we covered our bases on everything that we kind of wanted to, and some stuff we didn't. I think didn't think we were going to get into.
Yeah.
So thank you for coming on my show again or podcast again, Isaiah.
Yeah, no problem, dude.
And
I enjoyed it.
yeah, for sure. So you're always welcome again if you want to or whatever if you want to. So maybe we can come back on and talk about Nickelback more or something. I don't know.
Oh, I
So
don't think I have enough for a long episode, maybe like a 10-minute episode.
sounds good or something. I don't know. We'll brainstorm or something. But thank you
All right.
again. So thank you to everybody who's listening or who has made it this far. Congratulations. Uh, so thank y'all. So thank you, Isaiah, once again. I hope you have a great weekend and great rest of your day. So thank y'all. Bye.
All right, thank you. Bye.